We've all heard stories by now about how China supposedly forces abortion on women, half of the population. Well, it turns out there's actually one case where this is actually true. A woman was forced to have an abortion at 7 months, when at 6 months it's illegal in the Shanxi province. Now, the city officials have apologized to 27-year-old Feng Jianmei, who was coerced into having an abortion. Now, the government said is currently investigating and has suspended 3 Anqing city officials who are expected to probably disappear in the next couple months. What they said they will also be doing is reviewing their family planning policy. Now, this woman had an abortion because she couldn't afford the fine for having another child. Now, officials forced her, and it's illegal to force somebody to have an abortion. Now, activists say she was forced into the abortion because she could not afford the fine for having a second child. Now, interestingly, there's supposedly a forced abortion policy, while forced abortions would be illegal. And supposedly, some people have used this one incident of 3 corrupt officials who are probably, the Chinese government is probably going to get rid of them, as proof that this has happened to the hundreds of millions of women who live inside of China, which is absolutely ridiculous. Because if there were hundreds of millions of women going through forced abortions, the entire world would know about this, and there'd be millions upon millions of documented cases. This is one incident of one person, of one woman having it done to her by government officials. Now, here's an even more insane part. Of course, communism will actually be blamed for this. Now, of course, under communism in China, they had free contraceptives or subsidized contraceptives, along with abortion having been made available. Under capitalism, people are fined for having an extra child. I mean, this is obvious. In communist China, they try to avoid the problem. In capitalist China, they punish the problem. Rather than seeking to prevent the problem from happening, they punish the result of the problem. But of course, being the right wing, and well, actually, the liberal establishment as well, will blame communism for it in a completely disingenuous and dishonest manner. Now, it is interesting here to note that she had an abortion because she couldn't afford the fine. So she did it out of disadvantaged economic conditions. And I absolutely agree, and this is what a lot of activists are saying, and that's absolutely true. The same people who are saying this are the same people who turn around and say there's no such thing as slave labor or child labor jobs because of coercive economic conditions. There's no such thing as going into prostitution because of negative economic conditions. But of course, in this case there is, but in all those other things, there's no such thing as economic coercion. Doing what you have to do out of economic necessity. And to those people, particularly libertarians and particularly the most vile of conservatives, believe that that doesn't exist. However, a lot of them have been very quick to jump on this and say it's an act of economic coercion. Interestingly. Now, of course, there are some other things we have to deal with. Like, for example, the fact I don't believe in the one-child policy. I think it's wrong. And, of course, people watching this video are going to go ahead and assume I just do anyway, even though I've just very clearly stated that I don't. Or that the one-child policy was brought in after Mao died and wasn't even actually in the government. And, of course, people are going to take this one case of one woman being coerced into an abortion as proof of hundreds of millions of women being coerced into abortions. It doesn't matter how I report this or how anyone else reports it. It will still be reported as China forces hundreds of millions of women to have an abortion.